Oh, I just found out about this. We have the Smogon Teal Mask viability ranking thread. Let's see what the Timmies have to say about the metagame. In this thread, we, as a community, will be ranking every single justifiably usable Pokemon into tiers, ranking their viability in the metagame. You're encouraged to post your thoughts and opinions on the various Pokemon that are viable in OU and what tier they should fall under. So, like, viable in OU, we're already just going to watch, like, tons of Pokemon that are completely good get ignored because, oh, they're not OU, they don't count. Therefore, all of our decisions are justified. Posts in this thread will be taken into account when deciding rank changes, but the ultimate decision will be handled by OU Viability Ranking Council vote during each slate of rankings. It always comes down to the council, which means no, the plebs will not have any consideration for how this is handled. The general idea of the topic is to rank each OU Pokemon under rankings that go in descending order. This is a tier list for the entire metagame. Everything is lumped together. There won't be any segregation between offense, defense, support, all of that stuff. For example, Cinderace can be A- as a supportive presence, Walking Weight can be A- as offensive, Dondozo can be A- in defensive. Finally, there'll be a council of experienced players. That's all. It's all their council and their elitism, even though they're not playing real Pokemon and they understand nothing about the game anywhere inside of Smogon. So I'll discuss the vote on the ranking of Pokemon and then the metagame development, all that stuff. So here we go. Starting off with S rank, we have nothing. See, Smogon bans work. There's arbitrarily nothing in the S rank. Therefore, everything is balanced, and the God tier council has determined so, and now Pokemon can be saved. But that brings us to the S- rank, which is probably going to be the only part I agree with, because, yeah, Golden Go has always been a good Pokemon, and King Gambit just kind of proves that following Smogon makes you a bad player because of all the flavor of the month stuff, and just incredibly misguided understanding of the game, because King Gambit was always good, but didn't get a lot of play early on. Instead, it was a lot of flavor of the month stuff, but then, like, Fluttermane got banned, even though King Gambit deals with Fluttermane really well, but then that ban logic doesn't work because we can't not ban King Gambit because it's keeping Golden Go in check. We just have to ban everything that's strong. It's just like a nonsense cycle. Also, we just lost 2 Pokemon because people are like, oh, you need to talk about the Gliscor ban, which is a complete joke because Gliscor has existed forever. It just kind of shows like the decline of skill in Smogon, that they just can't even handle Gliscor now. But we also saw this when they banned Volcarona. And then also somehow Sneasler was a problem, even though it's never been a threat ever. So okay, all the problems of Smogon kind of showing through. And then like now Golden Go, King Gambit, all these other bans, it's just really out of control. So yeah, King Gambit's always been like an S tier Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, regardless of format. And Golden Go is just really annoying and stupid, overtuned, and and like you just have to deal with it. And it's a ghost type, so it gets a little harder to deal with from time to time. And to me, this comes off as like the signal of the next Pokemon that need to be banned, where it's like, wee woo, ban these, and then there's no problems ever. But then we get into A+ rank, where we can just see the complete joke of Smogon. Trashapult is A+. Like, the worst pseudo-legendary Pokemon that can't accomplish anything because it doesn't have enough offensive presence. It's just speed, but Pokemon that are just speed don't really do much of anything, and then it's just a complete waste of a Pokemon slot. Cool. Great Tusk, because you have to have your Stealth Rocks Pokemon that makes the game entirely predictable, but since no one is allowed to be creative inside of Smogon, they all just kind of net deck the same thing. So yeah, somehow that's A+, even though it doesn't really do much. Iron Valiant, same thing. Like, the offensive presence of Iron Valiant, not crazy, unless I guess you just ban every other sweeping Pokemon. So, again, further proving like Smogon bans have done nothing to make the game more balanced, competitive, or even enjoyable. You just create a nonsensical mess. Ogerpon being banned, which means like Wellspring is it. I haven't even seen anyone attempt to use Wellspring anywhere else, so it's just one of these weird things. Like, they have warped the game. They have detached themselves so far from what real Pokemon is. This is just actually like a really interesting glimpse into how the game functions. And then Zamazenta, because weirdness on restricted Pokemon. Cinderace. We talked about this in previous videos. Cinderace is just doing like court change shenanigans and supportive stuff, and allowing 5 heavy-duty boots on a team is what's keeping it viable in a weird way. And it's still being run like completely wrong. So that's Smogon. Clefable. Clefable is a good Pokemon, but does not exist in like real modern Pokemon because of the Japanese schizophrenic anti-setup meta. Like every time a Clefable lands, that thing's gonna get encored, or also just like Hearthflame Ogerpon one-shots it. So by again removing the Jenga pieces of power and playing around with things, you're creating like a lot of weird game states where like, yeah, Clefable's really good, only here. Dragonite's always like just a weird threatening Pokemon. I consider it more of a threat because it can just run Encore and ruin your day and then set up and win. But anything that's like Terra Normal, Earthquake, Extreme Speed, that's just griefing. But maybe Dragonite's just like A because it's reliable. Iron Moth. It's a weird Pokemon because it can run you over situationally, and if it like Acid Spray anti-tanks through a Pokemon and then like gets set up, that's a thing. And then we have Alolan Ninetales. Ah, yes. Now, just the screens meta taking over for Smogon. Rillaboom. Rillaboom's in a weird spot because, like, it was fine before Grassy Glide, and then it got Grassy Glide, but then Teal Mask Power Creep just meant, nah, it's actually not really that good or usable of Pokemon. Tinglu is annoying. And here's, I guess, maybe the one thing I can respect. Like, Zapdos, I think, is getting heavily underplayed right now, and could probably have like a lot of really cool potential, especially like getting a lot of status and just being a long-term annoying Pokemon, even in like 3v3 or Battle Stadium 6v6. So yeah, like it just holds together all the weirdness that's going on inside of Smogon. However, setup has always been fraudulent, or like entry hazards has always been fraudulent. So Iron Tusk, not great, or Great Tusk, not great. Hisuian Samurott, oh, being able to attack and set spikes, not great. Any entry hazards is trolling, and then like Hisuian Samurott's just not a good Pokemon. Amoonguss, I guess it exists. Same thing with Glimmora, because like if you're using Glimmora as an entry hazard Pokemon, it just sucks. And then like Toxic Spikes never does anything. But as an offensive like specs coverage Pokemon, just laying down one shots all the time, Glimmora's pretty good. Enamorus does not exist as a thing. I don't know how this could ever be any rank that has an A next to it. And going back to Amoonguss, like Amoonguss is a weird Pokemon because it depends on kind of like the meta and what's common. If we go back a couple generations where it's like, yay, Ferrothorn versus Amoonguss versus Venusaur or Mega Venusaur matchups that just stall out for 40 minutes. Like, we don't have that right now, Game Freak. You can give us longer than a 20-minute clock or ways around that. So, yeah, Amoonguss, like, it doesn't feel A-, but it's still like a Pokemon that you have to get through, and it's kind of frustrating. We talked about how Rabombi has magically become a threat in the kitty format of Smogon because like Sticky Web. So it's like, yeah, they just have like their own weird, I don't even know, like warpings of how Pokemon's supposed to function, where it's like, yes, entry hazards only, and setup, and like screens. If we get screens and or entry hazards, we win the game. Screens and or entry hazards, we win the game. And just like repeating that for like just straight into madness. I don't know. Galarian Slowking, just a better Slowking, I guess. Yeah, the typing elevates it above Slowking, making the chilly reception for all the other setup work, I guess. I don't know. And Walking Wake, weird decision by Game Freak to still not make it playable, so is this kind of like a thing where Walking Wake and Iron Leaves or whatever is going to be catchable inside the DLC, so it's like an early access DLC Pokemon, which is why it hasn't been obtainable? That's kind of like my only guess. So I don't know where its power actually lies because I haven't experienced any of it. Alomomola, power crept out in kind of like a weird way. Dondozo, definitely A tier, but because they remove Okos and like all the good balanced stuff inside of Pokemon, I guess Dondozo without Fissure Rest is not going to be as insane, so maybe it should be something. Garganasalt, it plays around to where like it can randomly elevate, but then also get shoved down. However, I think the Teal Mask did kind of bully it out of A tier, because once again, like Ogerpon just comes in, like it doesn't matter if you set up Iron Defenses, because it's just going to crit through, especially if you Terra off of your rock typing, or even if you're trying to set up and then you're just eating super effective Horn Leeches. It doesn't matter, it's just too much damage. So we got that. Regular Ogerpon just chilling down here in B. I don't know what nonsense is going on with Smogon. And then their precious baby Landorus all the way down to B+ tier because they found a new toy to play with. That's just so weird. Heatran, Skeledirge, Tornadus. So now we're just kind of like getting into Pokemon and viability. And I'm wondering like if it's all about specialized team compositions at this point, where it's like, yeah, Skeledirge just kind of works and sets up on a lot of things. Torkoal for bringing Sun, but like doesn't really do too much unless you're pulling like Yawn Shenanigans. And no one's pulling Yawn Shenanigans, that's too high skill cap for Smogon players. Tornadus, Therian. Now it's like, okay, we thought we were looking at like a weird, distorted Pokemon up here, but it just keeps on getting weirder the more you scroll down. I wasn't expecting that. We're like, okay, so somehow that's B. Garchomp's in its own thing. Meowscarada just isn't good unless it's like Trick something. I wonder if like Trick Bandit is actually beating Trick Scarf, because you can have some damage potential. Like Terra Grass into a Choice Band creeps onto some one-hit KOs and does some wild stuff, or you just trick their tank and remove it from the game and it's a 5v5, because now your Meowscarada doesn't do anything. Rotom sitting at B might be one of the most rational things I can think of. Ursaluna. I'm guessing Blood Moon Ursaluna has been banned in one of their just like schizo rampages over at Smogon. Toxapex. See, Toxapex is like a really good Pokemon that if they don't have any anti-tank, it just shuts down an entire team most of the time. But that doesn't exist over in like real Pokemon, so it almost feels like less viable than B if you're trying to play on the battle stadium. But here it's like, yeah, I guess it can just exist, and maybe there's other like power creep and weirdness. But if I'm looking at this, I'm like, what does Toxapex have to worry about here? Not really sure. So we got that. Cresselia B-. Kind of feels that way after just kind of playing through the game where, yeah, one of the fattest, craziest Pokemon just gets two-shot before it can set up and do anything. Screamtail's interesting. Scizor, offensive pressure. Mousehold. Now that's D tier. No one ever got Mousehold to work, but that Tidy Up. There was even a thing where it's like, oh, Furret was actually starting to rise into higher ranks because it can tidy up, and then that's it. The just only focusing and tunneling on getting your entry hazards and throwing away the game, I guess. Screamtail pulling some shenanigans. Now we're in like C+. So Basculegion, C+, because remember, they banned Last Respects. So I guess the Pokemon doesn't exist. And it's an interesting adaptability Pokemon and can do some rain things. And sometimes I've won games with like the Basculegion Scarf Sweep where I just press Wave Crash and then I KO two things. And I still find the pickup I need. Blissey falling to C+. Yeah, that's a feels bad. A lot of like physical offensive threat right now, but then like Blissey also struggles into a lot of special attackers, especially with all of the anti-setup going around. Brute Bonnet never took off. Clodsire is an interesting unaware Pokemon, but not like outright damage, so it doesn't succeed as much as just coming in with the Skeledirge. Like, Skeledirge finds its in onto a physical Pokemon, it just wins the game, because it will-wisp that Pokemon, it gets to recover, and then it can start stacking, and then doesn't get one-shot by, like, a special attack in, and then can take over a game like that. So, Skeledirge has some interesting play around it. Iron Hands. I was always wondering, like, how does Iron Hands just not work? Like, you just go Banded, Terra-Fighting, Drain Punch. You two-shot everything, and then you heal all of your health back, and then you're still naturally bulky, and then you should win. And it just never happened, which is kind of weird. Mamoswine, one of those setup darlings, you know, where it's like, well, I get to hit something 4x with that Ice Shard, and then I get to go Stealth Rocks. It's never really good to begin with, even going back in previous generations, and now it's just kind of like exposing some of the fraudulent Pokemon, where it's like, hey, once you actually like start playing into other things, yeah, the game gets a little tricky. Galarian Moltres, yeah, it doesn't really exist. I don't know what people are cooking with Basculegion female to make it a third of a tier lower than Basculegion. Breloom's fallen, Crawdon's fallen, that doesn't seem correct. Namorous is terrible. Alolan Muck. Weirdly haven't seen much Alolan Muck. And then, like, now we're just in D tier, and that's it. Wait. Gone. Yeah, I'm starting to think, where are all the good Pokemon? Because I feel like there's a lot of Pokemon they ignore because they only worship OU, which is based on usage and not a Pokemon's power, because all the kids over at Smogon don't understand Pokemon and are just genuinely terrible at the game. They like can't fit things in here. Where it's like, yeah, the top of UU should get some kind of recognition inside of OU, especially if it's all these like rankings. And a lot of these Pokemons I wouldn't even consider OU to begin with, even like in these higher ranks, because I was talking like, oh yeah, you don't see them, they kind of do weird things. So they are just living in a different reality, and then they get upset when you call it out. Wild. And then some kind of crazy updates and shenanigans, blacklisted Pokemon, nominations, removals. Oh, let's see what our boy Finch has to say. Agree with 99% of the ranking. What makes Skeledirge B+. It's been having a rough time in a world ruled by ground and water types. Not quite that well, I mean, like, that's the whole thing about Terra. It just goes Terra Fairy, and then it doesn't care about all these ground and water types. So, Unaware, Timely Terra, useful. Matchup in Gliscor, but then Gliscor got purged. Politoed over Pelipper, D tier shenanigans. Cinderace deserves A+. Wacky. Wow, here's a thought I can agree with. Why is Politoed D? Encore, lack of rock weakness, and access to hypnosis. Ooh, Smogon might have been onto something that we actually haven't seen from the crazy Japanese anti-meta, or like anti-setup anti-meta thing. Where like, yeah, Rain Encore on Politoed probably just hard wins some games into certain team setups. I mean, like, where's the Basket Legion last respects after that? Or like, Politoed just gets work done. Interesting. I want to skip down. Yeah, and then Mousehold, Masquerada, shenanigans. Bro, I just want to like scroll to the end to kind of see like where the post ends because it got locked. But dude, look at all the dude is going on like just the most insane thing over Shaman needing to be in C tier. Oh my goodness. Wow. And like that's kind of a shame where if all these misguided players actually like learned real Pokemon and maybe tried to apply themselves, we could actually have interesting discussion and development inside of real Pokemon. But they're here, but I guess something has to be wrong with them for them to feel Smogon is the right way to go. All kinds of weirdness overall, and then I'm just thinking like VGC is all cheaters. Pokemon could have been so much more beautiful and just really awesome to break down, like when we get into these damage theories and like all the discovery. That's why I'm the best Pokemon player, because I'm the only one that thinks about the game and like these proper ways to really make discoveries and understand how the game is supposed to work and stuff. But also like Japanese players are onto that, and then they throw a wrench in my plans where it's like, I have found the most optimal way of playing, and that is tank setup. And then for the last year and a half, or not last year and a half, last two generations, they went, really? Let's just make everything Encore and then discover that that's the true way of playing. So like we get interesting layers of development through outside of Smogon, through like the official ways Pokemon's played. But then everyone in VGC is just trash, and they can't win without cheating. Yeah, there's the remove Gliscor, some talk about Infernape. No, and I guess because we've gotten into all these changes, they're just going to kind of lock the thread. Because, like, yeah, we had all these bans, had all these changes and stuff. Wow, Iron Tusk to S is what these people want. I see Rillaboom going down. I don't know the state of Tinglu after all of their bans and nonsense. They're just making moves, huh? But yeah, it is kind of interesting to see how, like, every form of Pokemon has stagnated for one way or another. Because VGC is like all cheating and bad players, and then they just get like stuck onto something. Smogon, they've warped it outside of Pokemon, and then because no Western players are playing the Battle Stadium for singles, or even like trying to make some kind of 6v6 singles, there's no development there since it's all just like schizophrenic Japanese players. And then like Pokemon just is locked as this thread. Okay, I wanted to see like UU, and they do have some UU Pokemon in the OU viability thread, but not all. And then that's kind of weird, unlike how the power rankings go. Like, Rotom's actually UU. Does that mean like some OU Pokemon weren't even ranked or listed? We have some borderline, and actually no, I think Smogon just becomes so condensed that like there's almost no OU Pokemon now, and we can see that through the usage rankings, where like we have seen the worst that of usage that has ever happened through Pokemon, no matter how many bans, all these quick bans, all this ban acceleration. So yeah, it's like extra wacky and destabilized. And then just like random other picks where it's like, yep, this Pokemon kind of works here and kind of functions and stuff. And even like RU, like Basket Legion hitting C tiers and stuff. No Chandelure. Nah, Chandelure's good. And Hippowdon's missing. Hippowdon's like the ultimate carry. We got some other Pokemon where I'm just going through, I'm like, wow, there's not a lot of Pokemon that I use and have made work really well. Interesting. So yeah, just a complete bastardization of the game. It also is kind of weird how, like, the metagame is just arbitrary on, like, usage and Pokemon stats like that. But when 41% of teams have a King Gambit, okay, maybe it has been worse, because wasn't there, like, a Landorus era of 46% or something crazy? But then, like, we saw a lot more of a drop where it's just, like, I guess I have to pull up the stats to kind of see how it looks. Oh, dang. I got it all set up, but it's not in screen region. 1 second. There it is. So we have April 2018, Gen 7, Landorus Therian almost at a 50%. But then, like, it just kind of cuts down pretty quick. So it's like 24, 22, 15 at 10%. What do we have? 15th here, 11%. So yeah, people are just kind of like gravitating in this generation to just floating at the top and not really finding any other picks. So like they're all about trying to make the game less centralized, and they've done nothing to accomplish that. Then we have some other usage. And also it is kind of weird, like, to make everything about usage when the power rankings we just went over had all kinds of mixing and mashing, but those are almost never taken into consideration when you're arguing with a Smogon player. They only know how to say OU, UU, BL, Uber, 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 and stuff like that. So, yeah, it just kind of shows, like, the power's arbitrary, and it's kind of weird on the rankings. But overall, you can just kind of see, like, random cutoff, random Pokemon usage, and it being really weirdly weighted. But then we have Ursaluna Blood Moon. Did I miss that somewhere in the rankings? Okay, this is for October. Okay. Or since that was posted on October, that goes back to September, so this is the actual October stats, where numbers looking kind of interesting. So let's find, like, this cutoff, 38 Empoleon. Okay. Where do we find the cutoff? Around 38 or something on the usage stats, a little higher. So Greninja, Pokemon like that. People just, like, really trying to find ways of getting through it. There's Blood Moon, Ursaluna, and then stuff. Yeah, it's just so foreign. I don't know what to make of all this at this point. And then, as we've shown from, like, all of the surveys and all the other stuff, the game isn't getting too much better, and all they can do is just, like, mass ban now, which also doesn't make any sense, because we have the Indigo Disc coming out. That's going to be bringing in new Pokemon and new mix-ups to the metagame. So then it's going to have to take, like, into sometime mid-next year to start really fighting for, like, a balanced game that hopefully stabilizes once all the Pokemon that are usable are just kind of in. But then they're making rash decisions now when it doesn't really matter. So yeah, Smogon's weird. We already knew that. And it hurts my brain just to kind of, like, figure, just to look at it and just... It's gibberish, I guess. I don't know.